Hello, hello, hello. Welcome, everybody. Welcome, welcome. We can do a quick test. If you can let me know if you can hear me okay. Make sure my audio is working. There might be a little bit of a delay. So let me know if you're okay. You can hear me, Sherry. Great. Okay. Tina's turning on her iPad. I see Carla's here. Welcome. If a few other people could tell me if the sound is coming across okay, and then we'll get started. Oh, you can't hear. Let's see. Audio. Oh, you should be able to hear. Can you hear me okay? Oh, Bethany can hear. Okay, and Yara says the sound is perfect. Okay, awesome. So it is not on my side. I'm sorry that those of you that cannot hear on your side are having trouble, but I'm glad that it's not for everybody on my end here. So great, Katie. Thanks so much. All right, Joy, thank you for the feedback. Awesome. So welcome everybody. Thanks so much for joining me today. This is our day one of how to support your child with big feelings and challenging behavior without punishments or consequences. We have about an hour for this live session, and this is being recorded, so we'll have the recording available to share with you afterward if you have to drop off, but I hope you can stay through the end and participate through the end. So I'll try to keep it to an hour so that busy parents can get back to their routines. I also wanted to mention on the page that you're looking at this on, there is a button for upgrade to VIP. That's if you haven't done it yet and you would like to, because right after this hour is over on this workshop, we're going to go into the VIP room, which is a private Zoom link for anyone that's upgraded. So if you'd like to join me there, if you have any specific parenting questions, I'll be able to answer those one-on-one and in the group setting there in more detail. Bethany says, I'm not sure how to chat and watch at the same time. Do you see? You should be able to see the video on the left and the chat on the right, Bethany. If you're using like an iPad or a phone, maybe it looks different, but I think if you're on a laptop or a computer, you should be able to see the video on the left side and the chat on the right, hopefully. Yeah, if you're on an iPhone, you might just watch the video, and then if there's something to add to the chat, you can scroll up to that. All right, so let's get started. So, oh, they do. Okay, good. Okay, great. All right, so I'd love to kick it off with just some common humanity around where parents are logging in from for this workshop. If you could put in the chat where you're located and maybe, how old your kids are, it'd be great to share that parents really from all around the world with kids of all different ages struggle with supporting kids when they have big behaviors, big challenging behaviors that are more difficult for us to handle and have big explosive emotions sometimes. So put that in the chat and tell us where you're from. I'm in Arkansas in the United States. Carla's also from Arkansas. Sherry's from Wichita, Kansas. Her child is 14, I see. Tina's from Massachusetts. Welcome, Tina. Washington for Joy. Welcome, welcome. New Jersey. Sounds good. It sounds like we're kind of from all over in the US. Oh, we have Yara from Qatar. And UK. We have people from the UK and Illinois and Texas. Amazing. So I wanted to just share before we get started. Oftentimes parents that struggle with kids that are, having big meltdowns, they often feel alone. And I will tell you, there's over 500 people signed up for this workshop, and it's only been publicized for the last 2 weeks. This is a huge common topic. This is not something that you are alone struggling with. Over 500 people just in my little community of parents that I support have this challenge and need support on this and need resources. So yes, you are not alone in this. Others are also in the same boat, and we're going to walk through the framework and the step-by-step of what we can do to support you to show up as the parent that you want to be. A quick note on bonuses and prizes. At the end of this session, I'll be giving away, actually the bonuses were the cheat sheets and the self-compassion reset. So I did email that to everybody yesterday. If you didn't get it, let me know via email and I will send it over to you. So the anxiety cheat sheet, the screens cheat sheet, and if you have specific questions about those, we can talk about those if we have time at the end today, and definitely the VIP upgrade. They're meant for cheat sheets, but really there's a lot more we could go into in depth. And then self-compassion, we're going to weave that into a lot of our conversations tomorrow, especially. Tina, for the Zoom link, that is just for the VIP session. That starts in 1 hour. So you can hold off on that. Just be sure to stay here for the duration of this next hour. And then for prizes, I'm going to be selecting one winner from the parenting audience today for 3 private one-on-one coaching sessions with me, because so often when we sign up for just one coaching session, it's great to get some insight and some quick wins, but it often takes several sessions to see some real transformation. And so I want to offer this to one winner today. So the more you comment and participate, the higher chance you have of becoming the winner and being selected. And I'll be doing this tomorrow and the next day as well. So be sure to join me for all 3 days. Okay, so today we're talking about what to do in the heat of the moment, because this is really the pain point where parents are like, what do I do when? And what do I say when? And how do I get this behavior to stop, right? So we're going to go straight into that bullseye and talk about that today. But understand that this is really step 3 of the process. On day 2, we're going to talk about step 1, which is how to show up more regulated. Okay, Yara, I'll be resending the Zoom link again right after the session, and you'll get it in your email if you didn't get it yet. Okay, and Mike says he didn't get the cheat sheet from yesterday. I'll be sending those out again to you guys so that you have it. No worries. I'll be resending things a few times so that we have duplicated the process so you get what you need. But tomorrow we're going to talk about how to stop yelling, how to show up as the calm and patient parent, because it's really hard to support your child in the moment when you are also dysregulated. And then on Thursday, we're going to talk about how to get your kids to want to behave and how we build in connection outside of those moments to really increase cooperation so that you have some influence over your child during those tornado moments, as I call them. A little bit about me. I won't spend too much time on this. I did include on the live page where you guys are watching this a little link about me. You can look at my credentials and then my parenting journey. As you see, I'm no perfect parent. I was a calm, patient person before I became a parent, right? Once I had kids, I figured out where a lot of my triggers were and still evolving. So this is a process. It's not perfection. And we're going to be talking about how we go from perfectionist to tomorrow, especially to like, becoming a peaceful parent in progress. There's no such thing as a perfect parent. Hiral's talking, has a question on dealing with a lot of depressive thoughts, suicidal ideation, really intense emotions for most people consider fairly mild disappointments. We can talk about that, definitely. We'll get into some of the questions at the end. But definitely when we're talking about suicidal ideation and depressive thoughts, I would definitely encourage you to reach out to a mental health professional, a therapist, because there's more clinical intervention where you would go in person to see a provider. Whereas, for example, with parent coaching, I do a lot of the coaching virtually and I don't treat children. I work with adults. And so again, distinction between parent coaching and mental health licensed providers who also, psychiatrists can prescribe medications, et cetera. So, and so a little bit about me. My background is in healthcare leadership. I spent a decade in high-level executive role where I learned the skills of leadership. And lo and behold, parenting is exactly what leadership looks like in the real world, except with little people, not big people. And so I had a lot of experience in the workplace working with emotional intelligence with adults and learning to manage and influence adults. And then I became a parent and I was like, oh, this is actually what also kids need. Kids also need a sturdy leader. They need you to be the confident parent that shows up with calm and a reasonable perspective, right? And to be able to see their perspective. So we'll talk about that as well, like how emotional intelligence really on the last day is the foundation for how we raise resilient kids, um, and kind of how it all connects to peaceful parenting. So before I became a parenting coach, again, I was in that leadership position, and then I transitioned out of the full time workplace in the facility to working from home, so I could spend more time with my kids and be more present physically. And then as I continued to work on myself to become a more peaceful parent, I discovered that you could become a parenting coach, and just immersing myself in this world, and I really just have this desire to go from when I overcame being overwhelmed constantly, yelling at my kids, being triggered for every little thing, this mental haze of just feeling like I'm just a bad parent. If I could overcome that, I know you can too. You just need the right resources. And I've spent years and countless amounts of dollars on supporting myself and rewiring my brain and building healthier habits. And there's so much information that we don't know as parents because it's not taught to us. But you can learn this, and we'll talk about how you can learn these practices for yourself, because if it feels overwhelming right now, it doesn't have to be this way. There are different ways to parent and to show up in your life. Um, and so peaceful parenting, mindful parenting, this peaceful parenting approach was founded by Dr. Laura Markham. I just want to give you kind of the three big ideas, which is what this workshop is based on. I was trained by Dr. Laura Markham, the author of Peaceful Parent, Happy Kids. If you haven't gotten your hands on her book, I highly recommend it. Yes, Tina says captain of the ship. Yes, Bethany, because our parents didn't know either, of course. And this is kind of like this is how you actually heal your own childhood wounds, is you come to the realization at some point, once you process your own anger and grief and all these other big feelings, is that, you know what, when I look at my parents' childhood, they also had a hard time. Like, they had parents that didn't know how to parent for emotional intelligence either. And they were doing the best they could given the resources. Closed captioning, I'm not sure if I can enable that on my side, but maybe you can on yours. I'm not sure about that. I'm so sorry. Okay. So peaceful parenting is about showing up as a self-regulated parent more often than not. So self-regulation, so noticing sensations in your body and showing up more peaceful in the moment where your child is already dysregulated. Yes, here's the name of the book. Peaceful Parent, Happy Kids. It's her main book. And then she has one for siblings as well. Peaceful Parent, Happy Siblings. I'm so sorry, Chris. I'm not sure how to enable closed captioning. Hopefully on the recording, you can, if you rewatch the recording, you can enable it on there. I just don't see it on my side. Okay, so as I was saying, let's see. I'm just going to look through these settings really quick. No. No, I don't see it on here. I'm not sure. I'm so sorry. So showing up as the peaceful, showing up with more calm and patience. Then step 2 is connection, which we're going to talk about on Thursday. And then step 3 is coaching versus controlling your child, which we're going to talk about today. So again, like I said, I'm starting with the third step because this is where parents feel like they get stuck, but understand that you won't be able to execute on this unless you become more peaceful and calm in the moment, and unless you have the foundation of connection, which is 80% of the work, really. This is more of the 20% of the interaction with the child. This is the big pain point, right? So let's talk about understanding challenging behavior. So when your child is exhibiting challenging behaviors, there's generally 2 criteria possibly at play when you're thinking about hypothesizing about what's going on for my kid. When they're exhibiting challenging behavior and it's something that you're like, they know better. Why are they doing this, right? Like, why won't they just cooperate? There's 2 possibilities. The first one is a very scientific, biological based understanding, which is that the nervous system, your child's nervous system, does not feel safe. And they cannot control their nervous system. The autonomic nervous system is an automatic response. It happens automatically due to signals that the child's receiving from their environment and inside of their bodies as well, which we'll talk about. And so either they do not feel safe in their nervous system. And so your role would be to ask, what is the unmet need? What is the child struggling with that they don't have met yet? Their need that's not being met. One of the things that makes the nervous system not feel safe is overwhelming big emotions. So if the child, let's assume the child does feel connected to you and you feel like you spend a lot of time playing with them and you feel like you have a close relationship, but they have challenging behavior. Most likely in this case, what's happening is because you already have the connection and they're still exhibiting this challenging behavior, their nervous system is overwhelmed and doesn't feel safe. And their big emotions, as part of that, their big emotions are overriding their desire to cooperate. So they want to cooperate with you because they feel connected to you, but they can't because their impulse for safety is stronger than their impulse to please you. And so in this case, you have to help them process these big emotions, which we'll talk about in detail, and de-escalate those emotions so that the so that the behavior can come back to skillful behavior. The second possible hypothesis here is that the child doesn't feel connected to you, again, which we'll talk about on Thursday. So defiance is a relationship problem. When a child has challenging behavior that is defiant against what you're asking them to do, why they don't want to listen and cooperate with you. Again, if it's the second criteria is that they don't feel like they have a reason. They don't feel like they have a reason. This is so true with strong-willed kids. They don't feel like they have a good enough reason to do what you're asking them to do because the strength of the relationship is too weak. The connection between the parent and the child is not strong enough to override the child's impulse for what they want to do. You know, like I want that cookie, but mom said no. Well, I'm going to take that cookie and lie to her because I don't feel such a pull to be honest with mom because I don't feel so close to her. And so you want to track your child's behavior and look for patterns. Just like when we talk about like when we're dysregulated as parents and we end up yelling and losing our cool a lot, when our kids are often yelling, hitting, losing their cool, kicking, throwing things, it's the same problem. Two nervous systems that are overwhelmed and they're in this habit of like, oh, when Lisa, yes, I can send the copy of the slides. Sure. So it's the same problem that we have when we are triggered and we yell and we're dysregulated. The same thing that our child has because our challenging behavior, when we're dysregulated, our challenging behavior is yelling, right? Or threatening or punishing. When our child has big emotions that they don't know how to handle in the moment, they also have challenging behavior. It just looks different, right? They might kick the cat or be mean to their sibling or, throw the cup of milk across the room or whatever it is. So track the challenging behavior. Like this is one of the key things, like in terms of specific strategy, like look for the patterns. It's not out of the blue. It's not coming out of the blue. Just like when you yell, it's not coming out of the blue. There's something preceding it. There's emotions that are piling up before that, thoughts in our heads, emotions in our body. And so we want to try to track these across time to try to figure out what is the trigger, the true trigger. Not when our child says no that triggers us, but it's something else before that, that is triggering us. Okay, so understanding big feelings. So what are big feelings? Why do they occur? So when children have these big, explosive, angry outbursts or just big meltdowns, whiny sessions, they're in the emotional part of their brain. And children, yes, Bethany, I love that. Yes. When we reframe challenging behavior, like we're all the same, right? We all have a nervous system that responds to stress. Challenging behavior comes out, it's a stress response, right? And so emotions that are overwhelming are stressful. They feel overwhelming. We don't feel like we contain them and they just blow out and we blow them at other people. We do this when we yell, and kids do this when they are misbehaving and having angry outbursts. And so when we're having these big feelings, or children are having these big feelings, they're in the emotional part of their brain. And the prefrontal cortex, which is in the frontal part of the brain, versus the limbic system, the emotional part of the brain is in the back of the head, more so. It overrides the prefrontal cortex. The emotional part of the brain overrides, closes down. If you're familiar with Dan Siegel and his hand model of the brain, it overrides the logic and reason, and also the child's ability to listen. This is a key important point because when children have big feelings, they're in this other part of the brain, and they actually even their senses, their ability to hear, their ability to talk, their ability to see these senses we have, they are compromised in a way because the emotions are taking us into a part of our brain that just feels like we're feeling everything. We're not able to, we have like input from the inside of our body versus being able to receive instruction from an adult telling us what to do differently or where to go, right? And so they're overwhelmed. They're basically overwhelmed and they cannot really hear you that well. And they certainly can't cooperate when they have big feelings because they need help decompressing these, right? So almost think of them as like when kids have these big feelings, like they're in a different state, and they are. They're in a different state, and this state is not conducive to listening, cooperating, certainly not, and teaching. Like when we try to teach kids when they have these big emotions, we try to teach them something or lecture them. They cannot hear any of that, like none of it. They're just like literally they can't hear us. Yes, Sherry, so relatable, right? And when he says leave me alone, like stop talking, because literally like when we're talking, we're saying like, and here's another input, another stimulus coming at you. And it's like language, it's sound through your ears. Now it's like, I expect you to process this now too. Um, and so when we do things like when we have these expectations of them to behave in a certain way when they have these big feelings, we're saying like, not only do you have your big feelings, but now I want you to do these other things too on top of that. Can you handle it? And they're like 3-year-old or 7-year-old or 12-year-old brain is like, no, I cannot like handle all this. So they just have a bigger meltdown. Okay. So another way to reframe it is that their feelings are too big for their little body. So imagine your child's body and imagine their feelings and picture them outside of the body because they're too big. They're too big for their body to contain. And really what we're saying is that their brain is not fully developed yet to manage their emotions. Their prefrontal cortex is actually not big enough to dampen the response of these big emotions and manage them. And also when parents struggle with yelling, same thing, right? Like our emotions overcome us and then we lash out. Whereas ideally we want our prefrontal cortex to come online when we feel a big emotion, to come online and soothe us and contain it in our body. We just don't have that clutch yet. We don't have that processing to apply the brakes. It's like applying the prefrontal cortex are the brakes that are applied when kids are having big challenging emotions and when we yell. Shavi says, after my kids were born, I realized I would be triggered easily with my kids' big emotions, and then my big emotions would come. Yeah, I had been working with a therapist to deal with my triggers from my childhood, and it helped me a lot. Yes. So it's really important that we do a lot of this work on ourselves because, and again, we'll talk about this more tomorrow, but they need us. They need us because if we can't be like the calm ones that are in our logical prefrontal cortex, then who is going to help us out of this mess, right? Yes, Harold says my son grunts a lot but gets angry when I leave him alone. So we'll talk about those strategies. Yeah, he wants you to be near, but talking in the moment makes it so much worse, right? Because again, think about the talking as like an extra stimulus. Plus, like if we're saying emotionally like a vulnerable words, it's like more vulnerability. They're already vulnerable, and now it's like more rawness, more, and they just like override. They're like, no, stop, like they can't handle it. And so we have to become detectives. But their bodies, their nervous system detects for safety constantly. So big feelings are, again, like can feel like a threat to a sensitive child or a neurodiverse child or a child that just, again, the prefrontal cortex hasn't built enough of a strength connection to dampen that response and help them soothe. So the nervous system is always asking, am I safe? This is like the number one question. If you don't remember anything about the nervous system today, this is the number one question. The nervous system is asking, am I safe? And this is why 80% of your parenting strategy is connection, because guess what? Connection equals safety. We're primed for social interaction and living in groups because we survive better that way as mammals. And so when our child feels unsafe, they feel alone. And so connection makes them feel like they belong to a person, to us. And so we'll talk about how connection kind of ties in with the nervous system more in detail, but the lack of safety could be coming from inside their bodies as well, like, right? Like it could be like a stomach ache or feeling like anxious, like in a real like signs and symptom kind of way. They could be having, an illness or, something internally that bothers them. It could be coming from the outside, their environment. So again, if a parent is often yelling or dysregulated, that environment feels unsafe. And if we're not consistently showing up with patience and calm, and if we let them trigger us into our own fight or flight, they are more likely to they will feel unsafe, because when we're stressed, they can pick that up. Like they can pick it up like little sensors, and that makes them feel unsafe. And then they have big feelings around it. So again, between people and relationships, and this process of picking up signals on the from the nervous system is called neuroception. And it's always scanning for three places: inside the body, outside the body, and between relationships and people. Okay, so one of the key things to look at when we're trying to problem solve, like what could it be for my kid? What is making them feel unsafe? What's going on for my child? We have to look under the iceberg, right? So at the top of the iceberg, you can only see like a little bit above the water, but there's a big mass under the water. So the tip of the iceberg is like they're being rude, they're lying, they're hitting, they're people pleasing. It could range from like aggression to like very passive, almost depressive symptoms. And so all of these external clues are the tip of the iceberg. Like the behaviors are on the tip of the iceberg. All the behaviors that are challenging. Like if I were to ask you, tell me what your child's challenging behaviors are, you would list them. We would put them on the top of the iceberg. That's the top that we can see. Now, when we get curious and we ask, what's going on underneath this iceberg? What's going on behind this rage that the child has? What's going on behind this whiny behavior? We have to get curious, not furious, right? Because again, if we get furious, it doesn't create safety. Now the child cannot calm down either. We're not there to help them. We've gone offline. They're offline. So we have to become a detective. So let's look at like, what are their emotional needs being met? Are there physical needs being met? Are there social challenges with peers? Is there executive function or learning challenges, maybe in the school setting? Are they overstimulated or understimulated? Do they have sensory processing challenges? Do they have a need for more autonomy and we're just controlling way too much? Maybe they're getting sick with an illness, right? Maybe our relationship with them is not strong enough. This is one of the big things that I want to focus on, because again, I can't help you with illness, but I can help you with connection and autonomy and feeling like you have their back, so that even if they have an illness, even if they have physical needs that are not being met, hopefully through the connection, you can kind of help smooth out those edges, right? We're going to talk about structure, routine, predictability. Kids thrive on routines. You've probably heard that so many times, but until you actually have good routines in your house, you don't really see the benefit of it. Predictability, structure. And we're going to talk about limit setting as well, because this provides a structure, provides a container for safety. Maybe they're more anxious than other kids. Maybe they're more fearful versus so bold and courageous. And so they struggle with that. This feels like a threat, right, to them. But again, one of the first places we want to start is connecting with them, because if we're supposed to be the one that helps them with figuring out how to get their needs met, which we are, we have to first be in close relationship. And a great example of this is like when you think about how students learn in the classroom. Students can only learn in the classroom as if they feel safe in the classroom with the teacher. It's kind of like if you work somewhere, you have a job and you have a supervisor. People leave their job because they don't like their supervisor. Students don't do well in class outside of like learning challenges or executive function or other diagnoses. If that's not the contributing factor, often it's the relationship with the teacher. They are willing to do the hard work of studying if they feel like the relationship with the teacher is worthwhile and they want to please the teacher. The same is true for parenting. Children will do the things that they don't prefer doing, but they'll do it for the relationship to stay on good terms with you. So we'll continue to talk about that. So I really want to get, again, this is like the coaching workshop lesson here today. So we're talking about how do we coach our child during big explosive emotions and upsets, and how do we redirect their behavior from misbehavior to more skillful, effective behavior, right? So of course you have to calm yourself first, like we said, and again, we'll talk more about this tomorrow. There's a whole lot that can get into this, but we have to show up more calm and patient ourselves. Then the next step is we're going to get into like, how do we connect and create safety? And then we empathize. Step 3, we want to empathize with our child, because empathy also is part of creating safety. It's creating emotional safety. So physical safety and emotional safety. And then we want to double check to see if our child feels understood by what we've said. So double check to make sure they feel understood. And then we're going to deepen the conversation again to make sure that it's like emptying out the cup, empty it out all the way, drain it, drain this upset completely. And these steps help us drain all the emotion that is bothering your child, that's overwhelming their nervous system, so that they can empty out those emotions. And then at the end, step 6 is after all those emotions are drained out of their system, we problem solve. But we don't problem solve. Often parents will jump to problem solving as like step 2. They'll try to calm themselves and then they go to problem solving. But we have lost the child. We have forgotten the child in the process. We have forgotten the emotional child that we have. They're carrying around all these big feelings. And now we're asking them to problem solve on top of that with us, but they can't. Because again, remember, they're in the emotional part of the brain, and problem solving is in the front part of the brain. It's a different area of the brain. Literally, they cannot think. They can't listen to you, and they can't think. They definitely cannot repair, because they feel like they're still in those big emotions. So how do we emotion coach our strong-willed child? So, whether a child is defined as strong-willed or has neurodiversity, they're highly sensitive, right? Strong-willed children and really neurodiverse kids, the whole category of kids that have these big explosive emotions, their nervous system is more sensitive. And what does that mean? It means that they're absorbing more from their environment. So they're not as walled off from their environment and even their internal experience as we think they are. They're absorbing a lot more than we realize, and they have a harder time handling all that because it's so much. Like the little body, big emotions, and it's too much sometimes. And so often these kids need to cry more often to offload, or they need more laughter to offload. They need to decompress their stress level more often than other kids, because they're absorbing more stress from the environment and between people and inside of their bodies than other people. So their nervous systems get more dysregulated more easily. This is why parents will say, this happens all the time. Yes, because their nervous system is primed for more sensitivity. And when they're little, this is how they'll behave. But remember, they won't be little forever. They will grow up one day and they'll be as big as you or bigger. And so hopefully we have given them enough repeated experiences of compassion and soothing that they're able to then self-soothe their big emotions. They'll probably still have just as big emotions, but their body will grow up and they'll be able to have a better, they'll have a prefrontal cortex that is fully developed that can dampen their own big emotions. But until then, we are literally their prefrontal cortex. So this is really important. Write this down. I am my child's prefrontal cortex. I am the one that dampens their emotional brain with my prefrontal cortex. They're borrowing from you. This is why you have to like stay nearby when they're upset, because if you leave, they feel like they're alone and they're going to die essentially at a cellular level. But when you stay nearby, even though they're like, don't come too close, don't talk to me, go away, come back, they still want that safety in like a proximity somewhere. That's like a good boundary for them, right? Not too close, but not gone. Definitely not gone, but not too close, right? So finding that sweet spot is different for each unique child. But remember, you're there because they're like, I need your mom or dad nervous system to help me through this, because this feels like it's too much for me. I feel like I'm drowning. So reframe when they need help to feel safe and stay calm. And when your child gets forceful, take a breath and calm yourself and try to listen to them. This is just their sensitivity. This is how, yeah, and ADHD definitely, with ADHD, we don't have so much prefrontal cortex executive function to dampen that response, right? The impulse control isn't there. And so again, we have to serve as that impulse control for our child to help them strengthen that muscle. We're strengthening a muscle of the prefrontal cortex connection to the amygdala. So ensure that they feel heard so they don't escalate. So acknowledge your child's viewpoint verbally, even if you don't change your position. It doesn't mean, when you acknowledge their perspective, it doesn't mean you're saying they're right and you're going to do what they want. You're just saying, I respect you, that I understand, like, you have feelings. I'm so sorry. Like, this is really hard. It sounds like, and we'll get into some scripts here in a minute, but you're not giving in to the behavior. You're understanding the emotion. So feelings are separate from behavior. We're focused on the feelings so that they can change and dissipate, so that the behavior is different. The reason we have challenging behavior is because these big emotions are driving the bus. They're driving this big bus of bad behavior because these big emotions are in charge, like anger, rage, frustration, grief. But the child isn't old enough to drive. So we have to get into the driver's seat and say, get in the back. I've got this. I can handle your big feelings. Um, and we can't, it's not safe to do that. We won't be doing that, right? Katie says the close enough, but not too close is a hard balance. Yes, it is hard. And we can talk about, like, how do you address this with your child in advance? You can ask them, like, when you feel upset, you always tell me, like, to go away. Is that really what you want when you're so upset? Do you really want me to go away? And usually they'll say, no, I don't. And then you can say, well, then what's a good place for me to stand? Do you want me to just leave and stand outside your door? I'm not going to leave you alone with these big feelings. And you only do this when they're not in the moment upset. But you kind of talk about, like, give them some perspective about what's happening and why you're doing that, so that when they get into that moment again later, they're like, oh yeah, that's what mom's doing. She's hovering because we talked about this. Like, they're able to a little bit grasp at that reason a little bit if we've given them some perspective. So talking about it afterward is sometimes helpful as well. Your child doesn't need to get everything they want, but they do need to feel understood. And so emotions don't dissipate until they feel heard. When your child is being forced, recognize it's a sign of feeling vulnerable, that nobody wants to be controlled and pushed around, right? So connect and reassure to make them feel safer, reducing the opposition and defiance. So if they're defiant to you, if they're oppositional to you, see that as a cry for help. They're like, I don't like you, but I need you. And they really want you closer. They need you closer and they want you closer, but they don't know how to do that because you've gotten into this pattern of, like, they have big emotions and then behaviors and then however the parent reacts, right? So they do want you closer and they need you closer for regulation, but they don't know how to get it. Shavi says, my older son starts hitting when he's having an outburst. It gets very difficult when he's hitting. If I keep my distance, he comes and starts hitting. And when I tell him he can't, it doesn't matter. It's either hitting or start throwing things. Yeah. So at that point, it's like, and I know that happens, and safety, we'll talk about, like, what you should do. But again, like, when they're already hitting and throwing things, we want to catch this like 10 steps before, because when a child is hitting or throwing things, they feel like nothing else has worked so far. How did we get to this place? Like, right? Like, they were dropping hints early, and this can be hard to figure out, like, right? Because we have to be detectives. We have to catch them like 10 steps before, because there is stuff going on for them. Maybe we're just not noticing it. We're not validating their experiences. So again, part of this emotion coaching is, like, to talk about, like before things get so heated, because the reason they hit and escalate is because they don't feel heard. So if we can hear them earlier in the process, they don't have to do that. They don't have to do it. Again, if there's, like, some diagnoses that could be part of it, with a nervous system, like automatic response to threat. But we definitely still want to, like, introduce that discussion more and more in the beginning, before things escalate. So defiance, let me just, as part of the relationship, your calm and your warm responses in tough moments can lead to positive changes in your child's behavior. So let's talk about what to do during meltdowns and tantrums. So your number one job during, like, a hitting or throwing incident is containment, keeping your child safe and keeping yourself safe and keeping the things safe. Don't think of this as a moment where you have to teach. They cannot learn, and it's not a good time for you to teach anything or to, like, think about what are the consequences of this. Although we tend to jump to that, our own nervous system tries to, like, take control, and it's like, control this child, control them. But it doesn't work in terms of the behavior. We need to contain, like, the immediate threat of safety. So how can we de-escalate hitting? How can we de-escalate? This is why peaceful parenting, we say we start, like, 2 to 12 years old, because after they are older than 12, they're bigger. And if they start hitting you at age 14 or 18, it's really hard, right? Like, you know, it can become really difficult, right? It's a tough situation. But this is where, again, we want to listen to the anger earlier and earlier so we don't get into that situation. But when children are smaller, we want to say, like, um, you know, if we can remove the item out of their hand, we move it out of their hand and we say, not allowed. No, we don't throw things, right? Like our role is a safety officer. It's like, you've been hired as a safety officer. Your job is to keep everybody safe. No hitting. I see you're so upset. This is really hard right now. So we're going to give them empathy. And this kind of all happens at the same time, like the safety, the containment, and the empathy and the validation, which I'll talk about here in a minute. But giving it time is really important. So these emotions are in their body, and they're going to evaporate if we give them a chance. So your child wants to feel their feelings and evaporate them so that they can feel better. But if we don't wait long enough through this emotional release with safety, then they don't process these emotions. So science shows us that emotions pass in 90 seconds if we allow ourselves to feel them. But we generally don't, right? We don't give our children enough empathy and space for them to feel their feelings. And they aren't so eager to feel their emotions either, because it's always felt like it's an emergency. If we can provide some physical comfort, that's really helpful, because our nervous system will send, again, more signals of safety with physical touch. Physical touch that's not violent sends signals of safety. And so we're trying to calm down that stress response. And if we can offer them a hug, or even just put like a hand on their shoulder, gently tap them, maybe rub their back, that releases oxytocin in their body. Oxytocin is the antidote to cortisol, the stress hormone. So it dampens the stress response. Also, if your child is small enough where you can pick them up and move them into a smaller space, that's a safe space. This will also be recommended. So if you're like in a big open living room with a bunch of stuff everywhere, obviously it's not going to be good for them to like grab things and throw them across the room, or throw things at you. And also to them, if they're in a big open space, like this is why these meltdowns, when they happen at supermarkets, it's like so bad, because it's such a huge open space, right? And they just feel like they're like contaminating everything with their big emotions. They actually feel like they're the like bad guy. But if we can be like, let's go over here, like we're going to go over here in the hallway, like sit down on the floor with them, or in like a bathroom that doesn't have like a bunch of glass stuff, or into their room, into a space that doesn't have things that they can throw. So we remove all sharp things, anything that they can damage. And we also make sure that they're not hitting us as much as we can, right? If they're actually like in your face trying to hit you, the best protection is to try to stop them, right? You're not going to be forceful back with them, but you are applying enough pressure to prevent the violence from continuing. So often they'll say, let go of me, right? Like put your hands down, like let go of my hands. And then you can say, I will only let go of your hands if you'll promise not to hit. I won't let you hurt me. It's not safe, and it's not okay. It's not safe. My job is to keep you safe. And so again, like you're still trying to be present physically. And often if they don't want you to say anything, you just stay there without saying much, because sometimes the words make it worse for them, right? So often it feels to parents like I'm not doing anything. And it's like, yes, you have to wait for these emotions to dissipate. And you're calm. If you're calm and you're present, that's actually doing something. You're actually doing something. They're co-regulating. They're borrowing from your nervous system. Even if you're not using words, if you have empathy in your body and you feel compassion for them, their nervous system doesn't exist in a vacuum. It exists in relationship to yours. It exists in this ecosystem of this environment of your home, right? And so we want to be stress is contagious, but so is compassion. So is a validation and understanding and empathy. That's also contagious from nervous system to nervous system. So if we're not saying anything and we're just embodying loving them and seeing the best inside of them while they have this big tornado, the tornado will pass as long as nothing's being damaged and nobody's being hurt. You can just carve out the next 20 minutes of just sitting with them. The trick about emotions is that they have to be felt. And if we move on to like stop the behavior, not problem solving, we're not processing emotions. If you've ever if you've ever been a yelling parent and you've tried to stop yelling, what you'll quickly realize is that you have to sit with your discomfort over and over and over again for it to slow down and dissipate, and so that you're not so reactive. The same is true for our kids. They have to embody their own emotions with our support so that they can feel their feelings and then let go of them so that they don't feel swamped by them and carry them into the next intersection. So don't be so quick to end the tantrum. Let it ride its course, right? These emotions are flowing at their own pace. You can't hurry it unless you're in a hurry. And then they're going to stuff their emotions. If you're hurrying them somewhere, they're going to stuff their emotions and then it's going to pop up again later. And now you haven't solved anything. It's just an ongoing cycle. So what do you say during a meltdown or a tantrum? Well, you could say nothing. If your child doesn't like you to say things, you say nothing. Just be physically present, embodying that again, like seeing the good in your child and understanding how hard it is for them. And that look on their face that they have when they're so dysregulated, like it's painful, and you have compassion for them and you're right here and you won't leave them alone. And you can handle this and you're not afraid. So you're not going to say anything, but you exude confidence and courage as a parent with compassion. Validating their emotions if they let you. So acknowledge and name their feelings. You seem so upset. Often when we say you're so mad, or you seem so angry, those other words kind of inflame them. If you say upset, that seems to be a word that most children can tolerate hearing. So if you say this is so upsetting, that word upset really kind of changes the game in terms of the kid being able to listen to you. So instead of labeling them as being mad or upset or angry, try using upset instead and see if that gives you a little bit more, if they can tolerate a little bit more of that. And the other things I would say is, I'm right here. I won't leave you alone with these scary feelings, because the child feels like these feelings are scary. They feel overwhelmed by these feelings and they're afraid of their own feelings. And if we are also afraid of their feelings and then we punish them and threaten for something to happen afterward, then they become afraid of themselves, really, right? We want them to befriend their emotions. The only way to tame them is to like befriend them and welcome them. But who wants to welcome like anger and rage and grief, right? It's scary when we're doing it alone, even for us. So that's why there's parenting coaches for parents to help with their own emotions, and parents help the child, right? So the parenting coach helps the parent with emotional regulation. The parent learns how to help their child. It's coaching, right? We're not trying to stop the emotions. We're trying to have a different relationship with them and to understand that emotions are just information about our environment and about our situation. They're not attacking us. So with empathy, we're matching and mirroring their tone to show you understand. You know, if your child is describing a problem to you, you can repeat back to them what you heard them say. You must be so upset to talk to me that way. Tell me what's happening. Oh my goodness. Oh, I cannot believe that that's happened. I cannot believe that. That is so frustrating. No wonder you're upset. Oh, you wish that that was different. You wish you could stay up later. I hear you. I bet when you're grown up, you're going to stay up till all night. You're never going to go to bed. This isn't what you wanted. This is not what you thought it would be. This is so frustrating. And it's not fair. It's not fair, especially with siblings. If you say to them, like, it doesn't seem fair, right? It doesn't seem fair. They will be like, yeah, it's not fair. Often with siblings, they do not think things are fair. If your child is crying, words can be a distraction. So maybe use them sparingly, because remember, emotions are in the emotional part of the brain. Language is in a different part of the brain. If we start talking about something, if we move into problem solving while they're still crying or raging, it's not helpful. And it's also like it suppresses the emotion. So then you haven't drained all the emotion out. They'll come back later. And so really try to limit your words until your child starts talking. That's a good clue. Like, I'll be right here when you're ready. And when they're ready, they'll start talking. And it's like, oh, okay, now we're shifting out of the emotional part of the brain into more language. Now they can actually use their words and tell me maybe what's going on, what's wrong. Until then, you may not know what's going on. You might just have to sit with the emotion and help them tolerate their feeling. Everybody needs to cry sometimes. It's good to feel those tears and let them go. I'm right here. You're safe. So if they're crying, let them cry, because it drains these big emotions that have been sitting there, and it helps them not to have anger and rage later, because those are just defenses that they don't have to cry. But if they're crying already, they won't need anger. They won't need rage. If they're crying, they won't need to hit. they're feeling their feelings and processing them so that they can let them go. What to say to double check, making sure your child feels understood by what you've said. And this really requires you to put yourself into their shoes a little bit. Is that right? Yeah. Is that what you're telling me? Oh my gosh. Yes. Am I getting that right? Did I get that right? Don't fight with them about what actually happened or what they're feeling. It is what it is. Their experience is their personal experience, right? You're not saying they're right or wrong. You're just saying, like, I hear you. And it almost requires this respect to give children the permission to feel whatever they're feeling without somebody arguing with them and telling them, well, your sister didn't mean to do that on purpose. I don't know why you're attacking your sister like that. Yeah, the reframing is definitely helpful. So when your child has the awareness of what they're feeling, they will shift through these emotions faster. And so you don't want to be like, that's not what you're feeling. You don't hate your sister. If you say, oh, you really don't like your sister right now. Sometimes it feels like you hate her. I get that. Yeah, it's so hard having a sibling sometimes. Then they're like, oh, wait, well, I don't actually hate my sister. I was just really mad that she doesn't want to share her stuff with me, whatever. Then deepen the conversation. Again, we're trying to drain these emotions. And this is where, again, parents don't do this. And you might have been trying to do peaceful parenting for a while, but you're not spending, and if it's not working for you, you're not spending enough time in these emotions. You're going from like whatever the initial thing was to problem solving or to setting limits. And you can't do that until they actually get all this stuff out. It's like a full backpack, as Dr. Laura Markham says. They're carrying this huge backpack and you're like saying, put some more stuff in there. Here's some limits I'm going to set. And they're like, it's heavy. So first, before you do anything, you unpack all the emotions out of the backpack. And then you're like, let's problem solve. How can we do this differently next time? Now they can actually think more reasonably. So we achieve this by providing support, acknowledging their emotions, and encouraging them to share more. Validation doesn't mean you agree with their feelings, but you still understand why they might feel that way. If you generally connect with their emotions, you might find yourself tearing up too. And this is a clue that you're really empathizing. If you feel like, oh, they always do this, like you're talking to yourself in your head, you're going like, can't wait until this to be over. You're not really empathizing, and their nervous system can feel that. But when you're feeling the depth of what they're feeling, when you actually feel grief at the time that your child felt grief, you're really syncing up. Like adult grief is the same as children's grief, but we don't give kids credit. We're like, well, what do they have to grieve, right? Like the fact that their baby brother was born, come on, like it's a friend for life. And they're like, no, I feel like I've lost my parents' attention and now I have to share it forever. And it's like this huge grief that they carry. But it's like when we feel grief, oh, I have so much grief. I need to call a friend and have a compassionate ear about a death in my family. When our children, especially like divorce or something, which feels like death to them, for example, we don't spend enough time processing their grief, and then they don't feel like understood. But if you can kind of tear up even as you're like empathizing and you're like, that's so hard right now, I'm so sorry, and you feel their like emotions and your eyes get glossy, you're on the right track. And some other things you can say is, ouch, that must have really hurt. You want to show me what happened? Reenacting, replaying, like bring it to life. Like, I want to know more. Tell me. No wonder you're upset. I didn't understand how important this was to you. Tell me more about this. Anger doesn't dissipate till it feels heard. But if it doesn't feel heard, it will escalate to hitting, throwing, punching, spitting. We must listen to the feelings so that the message is received and the child can stop escalating. So this is what I'm talking about, like 10 steps in advance. You've got to do these things, like the parts where you're like helping them process these things, right? And maybe not in the hit moment, because if they're hitting and they're like, if you come closer, I'm going to hit you. That's not the moment to deepen the conversation. First, like we said, do nothing, create safety, wait for things to come down a little bit. As they start to get their prefrontal cortex back online, they can use language. They can actually hear you. Now we can throw in some words like, this was really frustrating. I want to know what happened. Tell me more. This was not fair to you, was it? That did not feel fair. I want to hear how angry you are about this. What can I do to help to make this better? I'm on your team. You're not alone. We're on the same side. I hear you're upset because of something that happened. And also this happened. Is there anything else? Tell me more. So you're telling them to retell the story. And as they do this, they process more of these emotions. Doesn't matter what the story is. It doesn't even have to be true. It can be made up, but their emotions are real to them. And so we have to believe their emotional experience and give them the space and the safe, compassionate experience of showing up for them when they need us. Thank you for telling this. I'm sorry that what I did, what you didn't, is not upset you so much. Please tell me some more. Right, exactly. Treating them like the humans they are, which again, like it's this conventional parenting, like you're to be seen and not heard. And my emotions are more important than yours. Like, well, then no wonder they act out, right? Because again, outside of neurodiversity, because I know with like, nervous systems, it's a little different. Like, it's not something that they have a false belief about. It's just an instant reaction. If it's like a threat, it feels like a threat. So, how do we set limits with love and how do we teach, right? So, most of the time when kids and adults feel their emotions are understood and accepted, the feelings lose their charge and begin to dissipate. And if your child is still upset and not ready to problem solve yet, it means they haven't processed their emotions yet. And you need to go back a few steps earlier and continue to process more emotions. But when your child is ready to problem solve, you don't want to jump in with your solutions. Because then they feel like, oh, like mom always knows the answer. I don't know how to fix this. I need to wait for her to tell me, right? You want to ask them, like, what do you think we could do? What do you think we could do now? What could we do differently? So you did this, and this is what happened. So I wonder what might happen then. And you're kind of just like wondering out loud. This helps them. This is what actually you're doing instead of punishment. You are teaching them how to do things differently next time. Instead of punishment is like, you're bad and you're going to do something totally unrelated, like you're going to have your phone taken away as a punishment for some big emotion you had. Totally unrelated things. They will do that bad behavior again because the lesson wasn't really the right lesson. The lesson is prefrontal cortex reflection and building a different habit and helping them with emotions that they can have a different impulse next time, helping them brainstorm and reflect using our own prefrontal cortex. So the setting limits is not the same as punishment. We're setting limits on behavior. It's not okay to hit. I won't let you hit me. I'm right here. I won't leave you alone. This is really hard, and no hitting. I won't let you hit. I'm going to hold your hands until everybody calms down a little bit. It's not okay to throw things, no hitting your sibling, and then you take action. You don't wait until you don't ask them 5 times and then punish them. When you ask the first time and they can't do it, you stand up and you go to them and you take action then. Sometimes we yell across the room, I told you not to do that 3 times. And it's like, well, they're doing it because they can't meet our expectation. So when they can't meet our expectation, we go and we step up our parenting game by showing up like body to body. We're like, okay, what does this kid need right now to meet my expectation, right? So we allow all feelings. She's allowed to have her feelings. It's natural for her to feel angry and disappointed when we set limits. And it's bedtime. I get it. You don't want to go to bed. You wish you could stay up all night. I know. Our job is to accept those feelings, and to normalize them and support them through it. But the more we do this, the less overwhelming her emotions will be, reducing tantrums. So again, yes, it is really hard. Well, what makes it hard, Carla, is that we kind of go from peaceful to coercive. Like we don't always stay right in the empathic but firm limits. But also if we're overwhelmed ourselves, again, we'll talk about that tomorrow. When it's hard to stay calm, it's hard to set limits because you're not calm anymore. Now you're in your amygdala, not your prefrontal cortex, and you can only set limits when you're in a prefrontal cortex, right? Because you have goodwill towards your child. So empathy is the first step with setting limits, and then firm, kind limits. So you really don't want to clean up your toys and get ready for bed. I understand, and it's time. Let's work together. So when they can't do it alone, you step in and you help physically, emotionally. You have to be willing to help, because if we have these high expectations of our kids, but they can't meet that limits are really expectations. We're saying okay, this is my expectation, now do it. And the child's like, I can't. But they won't say I can't. They'll say, I won't. I'm not doing that. But they're not doing it because they need something else. They either need more connection with us or they need some kind of actual support to actually complete the task. It's overwhelming for them. With strong-willed kids, it's important not to waver on your limits. Stay clear, kind, and firm, but not punitive, right? It's okay to be like clear, firm, and still be kind. Just like a supervisor, think about your supervisor. The best supervisors are people that have high expectations of your performance at work. They're not going to just let you slack off. Um, but they also are supportive. They're like, what do you need to support yourself? Let's support you to be successful with this. So punishment doesn't work, and it makes them focus on feeling wronged instead of learning to behave differently and making them more oppositional and less cooperative. Strong-willed kids can't bear feeling powerless, so it's really important for them to have autonomy as much as possible. So giving them choices is a key way to give them autonomy. Like, this is what we could do. Let's problem solve. But it has to work for me, but I also want it to work for you. So let's find something that works for you and for me, right? And then sidestepping power struggles by letting your child save face. Often we're like, aren't you going to apologize, in their face? And they're like, they just feel so much shame. They can't apologize. And they're like, no, it's her fault, right? Then they blame somebody. So again, if they're not able to take responsibility, and you're not going to put them on the spot like that where they would lose face, we, we don't want to corner them. We want to like let them save face, because if they feel like they're losing face, they're feeling shame, and nobody likes to feel shame. It's again a stress response. So how many limits should I set? So your child needs a strong emotional bond with you to accept your empathy and connection. So if you need to set limits and they're not cooperating, like we said, it's either the nervous system is dysregulated as a stress response, or they don't feel so closely connected to you. So you need to increase your connection with them and your empathy, like we said, empathizing, validating, so that they feel like, oh, mom's on my team. She gets it, right? If she thinks that you're just creating frustrations for her or setting limits that are not fair, she won't accept your empathy. You can be like, I know, and I want you to do that right now, not in 5 minutes, right now. Now, of course, if it's like something urgent, sure, but is it always urgent? Like, I want you, as I said so right now. I said so right now. And it's like, is that really like so urgent? Or can you be like, okay, well, you can go now and then we can do this, or in 5 minutes. What do you choose? Like, what do you want? Right. And so are you doing it like just because you want to be right? And that's the controlling part, right? Coaching versus controlling. When we're so rigid about it and we're not flexible with our kid, we don't want to work with them. They can sense it, especially strong-willed kids, and they will rebel against that. So how can we work it out together, right? She'll see you as someone who could give her what she wants, but keeps saying no, right? So focus on setting limits around safety and family values as non-negotiable, right? Like in this family, we don't have violence. We don't hit when we're upset. In this family, blah, 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 whatever. Or, like safety rules, like it's not okay to hit. It's not okay to run into the street, right? Like, no, you're not allowed to have your screen in your room all night, right? Whatever it is. Avoid power struggles by using routines and rules. And that way you aren't the bad guy bossing them around. It's just that the rule is, no screens after 5 p.m., whatever the rule is, right? So discipline through the relationship, never through punishment. When you want your child to change course, think in terms of support rather than force. There's no amount of force in the world that can get a truly strong-willed person to back down. Most strong-willed children are fighting for respect. And if you give them enough support and they feel enough connection with you, strong-willed kids will usually agree to do what you want instead of what they want. So they're willing to give up. This is how they actually do what you want. They give up what they want for what you want because they feel like the relationship is so strong. Okay, so that's a great question. Hiral says, what's the balance of teaching kids when they do something wrong and making sure they feel remorse? So assume that they already know that it was the wrong thing to do. They already feel shame. Assume that if they hurt somebody's feelings, if they broke something, they're humans. When they know from little, like what is wrong, what is right. Usually that's not the lesson we need to teach. And if it is, then if they don't feel shame and they're breaking things around the house, it's like, did you know that when we break glass, it breaks and then we can't use it anymore? Let's not do that anymore. That's just information, right? Just telling them information. But let's assume they already know that that wasn't the right thing to do and they broke it. They already feel shame about it because they're acting in a way that they know that they shouldn't be. And when they cannot repair, We don't need to shame them when they can't repair yet. It's because they still have big emotions. So when children, so instead of punishment to make up for like whatever they did wrong, substitute repair. Oh, and we always fix what we mess up. We always clean up our own messes. So when your child damages something like a relationship or something in the house, how can you fix that? What could you do now to make a repair? And then you help them repair that. So kids cooperate because there's something they want more than getting their way in the moment, and they want that warm relationship with us. So what to do outside the moment, in the heat of the moment, is connection. We talked about this. We'll talk about it again on Thursday. It's 80% of your parenting, because until they feel connected, they won't accept your guidance. But this is especially true for strong-willed kids. We'll talk about this again, like I said, on the third day. So as we wrap up, tomorrow's agenda is how to stop yelling and show up as the parent that you want to be. Again, so let's see. Today's winner for the 3 coaching sessions is, I'm going to say, Katie. Katie, if you're still here, Katie Q. Katie Q, if you'd like to take me up on that bonus, feel free to email me. You probably have my email. Let me know and we'll schedule something. So congratulations. For those of you in the VIP sessions, I'm going to jump into that Zoom room next. I know we had a couple more questions here. So yes. Yeah, Ariane, if you want to be in the VIP sessions, you can upgrade. And then, yeah, the membership thing, it doesn't, like if you're already a member, you don't need the extra membership thing, but you'll still get access to the VIPs. So, and then I encourage you guys, if you have additional questions, please put them in the Facebook group, because as you can see, like, we had 60 people here today, hundreds of people registered. Not everybody's able to be here live, but put your questions in the Facebook group. I'll be in there answering those as well. Because I'm out of time here, and we'll be back tomorrow and Thursday to continue with the other 2 parts of this framework so that you can be set up for success. And again, for those of you that are registered for VIP but don't have the pass yet or the link yet for the Zoom, I'm going to email that out right now again to everybody so that you can hop on there, and I will see you in the Zoom room. Thank you so much. All right, Katie, I see you. Yes, feel free to email me, please, and we'll set up our coaching sessions. All right, everybody, thanks for joining me. I'll wrap it up here, and I will see the Vipers in the Zoom link that I'm about to send out again. And the rest of you, I will see you tomorrow, same time, 12 p.m. Central Time. And I'll be sending out the link for tomorrow, which is a different link to join this in your email tomorrow morning. So I will see you then. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.